Welcome back to the Anfield Exchange, and there's a lot of talk at the minute as to who's going to be Liverpool's number 9 this season. Will it be Alexander Isak? Will it be Hugo Ekitike? Well, social media is going off the rails because David Ornstein, Fabrizio Romano tweeted yesterday, this is what Fab said: Liverpool made club-to-club approach with Newcastle to discuss record bid for Alexander Isak. If Isak won't be available, Liverpool can enter the Ekitike race. Decision up to Newcastle, as he never wanted to sell Isak, plus offer new deal. David Ornstein said something similar. Liverpool make approach for Isak. LFC said no formal bid. Newcastle aware of Liverpool are aware of the stance at Newcastle, and it has always been this way. He's not for sale. So look, I think the first thing to say is yes, this news is exciting, but I think as Liverpool fans we have to sort of curb our enthusiasm and not go overboard with this. I see a lot of people on social media, Newcastle and Liverpool fans. Liverpool fans are all putting him in their teams and saying how unbelievable this transfer window's been. Newcastle fans are all saying he's not for sale. Some of them are getting quite irate about this. What I would say is Liverpool haven't bid for this player yet, so we have no way of knowing if he's available at the minute. So what these tweets were about, Liverpool are going to make a bid for Alexander Isak and Tessa Waters. It's up to Newcastle. It is up to Newcastle. If they want to keep Alexander Isak, they'll reject the bid. We believe the bid's going to be around 120 million mark. Newcastle will reject that bid if they want to keep Alexander Isak. That then will give Liverpool a clear pathway. I say a clear pathway, a clear sign as to where Newcastle stand. And if Isak is not available in this summer, Liverpool will then switch their attentions to Hugo Ekitike. So basically for Newcastle, what it means is you will have one and we'll have one. Newcastle will not have both of these players. It will not work out that way. What I would say, and I want to sort of just touch upon this because it doesn't seem to have been sort of muted on social media anywhere. Eddie Howe and Richard Hughes have got a fantastic relationship. They're friends, and could that help in terms of getting one of these deals over the line? So in regards to the Isak deal, look, I don't know Richard Hughes personally, but I would like to think that Richard Hughes will not be making any attempts to sign Alexander Isak if it's been a clear-cut Isak is not for sale. Like I say, they are friends. Eddie Howe and Richard Hughes are friends. They may have had these conversations off the record. We don't know. But it is another aspect of this that I think we need to take into account. What I will say, Newcastle hold all the cards at the minute. So Newcastle have this player that Liverpool want. They don't have to accept a bid for him. And if we end up with Ekitike, that's fine for us, but Newcastle won't feel like they're losing out on anything. But Newcastle have already gone out and spent on Anthony Elanga. They spent 55 million. They've gone out and they've put a bid in for Hugo Ekitike. It looks like they're serious about bringing Ekitike in. They also potentially need another centre-back. So we all know in recent years Newcastle have struggled with the PSR side of things. Obviously last season they weren't in Europe. How does that impact them financially this year? I would say Newcastle are looking likely they're going to spend around £150 million this summer. Maybe even more if they bring in a centre-back. For me, it looks like they need a way to balance the books. And I think a big player will be leaving the club, whether it be Anthony Gordon, whether it be Alexander Isak, whether they'll look to let Bruno Guimaraes go or someone like that. I don't know, but I think there will be sales at Newcastle. We've seen this morning, I think Sean Longstaff has just joined Leeds. So that's the first sort of inkling that Newcastle will be looking to sell. So I don't think it's necessarily completely done with Isak if Newcastle say no. I think there may be talks. Again, we'll have to wait and see. What I will say is there were talks of Alexander Isak getting a new contract at the end of the season. I believe the ownership changed and that didn't go the way Isak had hoped for. I believe the new owners looked at his contract. He had 4 years left on his new contract, on his original contract, and they said, we don't need to give you a new contract at this time. I think that's upset Alexander Isak. Now, the problem Newcastle have is if Newcastle decide to keep Alexander Isak and Liverpool bring in Ekitike, for example, Ekitike is Isak's long-term replacement for Newcastle. Newcastle could find themselves in a situation where Liverpool have taken a long-term replacement, and if next year Newcastle don't get into the Champions League again, they may be selling Isak for a reduced price anyway. He'll have 1 year less on his contract. He won't have Champions League football. Newcastle won't be able to demand the fee for him that they can demand right now. And I think that plays a part in this as well. Newcastle and the board at Newcastle and Eddie Howe will need to look at what is more beneficial to Newcastle in the long term. Liverpool went through something similar, and I know there's memes and everyone sort of comes and trolls the Liverpool fans all over social media. Liverpool sold Coutinho, and we strengthened with that Coutinho money with Alisson and Van Dijk. A lot of people online will have you believe that we've been strengthening for 5-6 years from that Coutinho money, but realistically, we strengthened with Alisson and Van Dijk. Those two players allowed Liverpool to take the next step and go on to win trophies. And I think Newcastle could potentially find themselves in a similar situation here. So if we talk numbers to start with, let's say Liverpool buy Isak for 120 million. If Newcastle then go out and get Ekitike for, say, 80, there's still another 40 million left from that Isak money. They could then go and say bring in Mark Guehi, who we know Liverpool have been linked with, and there's been reports that he will be available for around the 40 million mark. I think another conversation that potentially may be taking place between Liverpool and Newcastle is Liverpool will be saying, if you can sell us Isak, you'll get a clean run of Ekitike. Chelsea are no longer interested in Ekitike. They've brought in João Pedro. They've brought in Liam Delap. So Newcastle would have a clear run for Ekitike. But not only that, when Liverpool's interest in Mark Guehi came out, it struck me as quite an odd link. Maybe it's a long-term game that Liverpool have been playing, and they've expressed an interest in Guehi, knowing that Newcastle have been interested for a couple of years now. What Liverpool can do is use that as leverage and say, if you sell us Isak, not only can you have a free run at Ekitike, we won't get involved in the Mark Guehi deal, so you are free to go and try and bring him into your club without us competing for it. That's another aspect of it. And they've got that leftover money from the difference between Isak and Ekitike. So would Guehi be the answer? Would Guehi be the Van Dijk of what Liverpool brought in? I'm not sure, but it definitely strengthens the squad as a whole by bringing those two players in as opposed to just keeping hold of Alexander Isak. So again, that's another angle that you can look at and potentially try to analyse. We'll know in the coming days whether Newcastle really want to keep Alexander Isak or whether they're playing the long-term game here. In terms of Isak himself, what does Alexander Isak want? I think it's clear that Isak, if you're going to believe what you see on social media, which I don't recommend, but I think there's been a lot of reports that have come out that Isak would be interested in signing for Liverpool. Premier League champions, consistent Champions League football. So I think it's clear to see Isak would like to take the next step. The question then is, will he force it? Because unless Alexander Isak is going to try and force this move, I don't think it gets done. I think if Alexander Isak is content at Newcastle, I think what happens, Liverpool will bring in Ekitike and Alexander Isak will potentially go on to sign a new contract if that's on the table, or he may leave and he may go somewhere else in Europe. Again, something we'll have to sort of just wait and see and let time go by on that one. Now, Newcastle are a big team. Newcastle are, on the face of things, a big team. I don't like the attitude that social media is portraying that Liverpool are the top guns and we're making the rules and you only have one of them players. I don't like that. I don't like how the fans are portraying it. The facts are Newcastle are a big team, but And they're rich. They've got the money as well. They're still trying to manufacture ways to spend that money. The problem you've got is Liverpool have a history of winning trophies. Newcastle don't yet. So for those reasons, it's understandable why these players would want to play for Liverpool over Newcastle. It's not a reflection on the clubs. It's these guys, their careers are short, and these players, they want to win trophies. They want to win the biggest trophies and be on the biggest stages. I think Newcastle need to, over the next 5 to 10 years, just try and build up that trophy cabinet, get regular Champions League football, and then you'll have, in 5 to 10 years, you might be able to keep the Alexander Isaks of the world and bring the Alexander Isaks in the world to the club. I think at the minute it's a little bit early, and I do think that's why we're seeing these players choosing Liverpool over, and let's be honest, most clubs in the Premier League. If he doesn't leave this summer, Newcastle have a potential problem where, like I say, if Newcastle don't get Champions League football this upcoming season, Isak might leave next year anyway, and Newcastle might find themselves in a situation where they've lost the long-term replacement for Isak in Ekitike, but in a year's time they've also lost Isak as well, and they've not got the money that they would have got this year. So it's, look, there's a lot of parts at play in this one, and Newcastle really have to think about the long-term future of the club. Whether that's with Isak or whether that's not with Isak, only time will tell, really. Then you've got to look at the aspect. If Liverpool do get Isak, is Hugo Ekitike interested in moving to Newcastle? Yes, they can offer Champions League football, and yes, they look like a club that are on the up and have the best years ahead of them. But they don't have the stature in the game that your Liverpools have, that even your Manchester Uniteds have. So there's that aspect of it as well. What would make Ekitike want to come to Newcastle? I think the obvious answer would be Champions League football. I don't know what Newcastle's salaries are, whether they pay the players well. But if they could offer a good financial package as well as offering Champions League football, then it's a step up from Eintracht Frankfurt where he's currently playing. But I think we need to let it play out. I think there's a lot of talk of Isak and Wirtz and Salah are all going to be playing together, and we've got the best front three. We haven't even put a bid in yet, and these sort of deals take time. What I would say is the Ekitike deal will probably play out before the Isak one does. If Newcastle do entertain the idea of letting Isak go, they won't do that until they've got the deal for Ekitike boxed off. That's my opinion. It wouldn't make sense from a Newcastle point of view to agree to let Isak go and then Ekitike turns around and says he doesn't want to move to Newcastle. They'd have that deal boxed off. My personal opinion, if I'm being completely honest, I don't think we'll get Isak. I think Newcastle will want to keep hold of him. I think Liverpool will direct their attentions to Ekitike, and if that happens, the problem you've got with the way that Liverpool have manufactured this alleged interest is Frankfurt now know that a player they valued at 100 million, and Liverpool said, nope, he's not worth anywhere near that. Frankfurt now know that Liverpool have got 120 million to spend on a striker, because we've already expressed that's what we'll be willing to bid for Alexander Isak. So does that put Eintracht Frankfurt in a position where they just hold out for the 100 million? I'm sure they'd be happy to keep Ekitike. I don't know how Ekitike would feel about still being there, especially with a club like Liverpool interested. But is he the type of player that's then going to kick up a fuss and force his way out of the club? Again, we don't know. There's a lot of moving parts to this, and we're going to hear more over the next couple of days, probably over the next few weeks. My expectation is that Liverpool will put a bid in for Alexander Isak. I think Newcastle will knock that bid back. Whether they'll be willing to negotiate, we'll wait and see how Newcastle respond to the initial bid. But we'll see quite soon whether Liverpool are pursuing the Isak deal or whether they're moving on to Hugo Ekitike. But I do think Liverpool will end up with one of these two players. I think I made a video last week around these two, saying that it's likely we're going to have one of these two in. I'm leaning sort of 60-40 towards Ekitike at the minute as to what I think Liverpool will do. But for me, Alexander Isak is the dream signing. But like I say, we'll have to wait and see how it pans out. Let me know what you guys think as well, because I'd love to hear your opinions on whether you want Isak to come into the club, whether you think Liverpool could get a better product for a smaller fee in Ekitike. There's probably about 40 million. We all know Liverpool were quite short defensively as well, so is it the right move to be spending £120 million on a striker, knowing that for me we need two centre-backs to come in, but definitely one who has experience and can come into the team and deputise for Konate or Van Dijk when they need a rest. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you on the next one.